You're tuned into the Growth Ceilings Podcast, the show for builders, dreamers, and leaders ready to break limits and grow beyond what they thought possible.
Welcome back to the Growth Ceilings Podcast. I'm Jim Lovelady, professional implementer, EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And my guest today is Jake Stahl, a behavioral sales strategist, creator of the Mind Mechanic and host of the Lead Gen Reboot Podcast. Jake's trained more than 12,000 professionals across 6 countries and built a career helping people win deals by mastering perception and presence. He teaches teams how to read the room, adjust in real time, and say what others won't, so they get heard, not ignored. We're diving into how perception shapes influence, how leaders can use behavioral awareness to strengthen teams, and where technology fits into human connection. Let's get started. Hello, Jake.
Hey, Jim, thanks for having me. It's quite an honor to be here.
It's a privilege. When I saw you accept my invitation, I was thrilled. I had this circled on the calendar, and I'm really excited to talk to you. Let's get right into it. You call yourself a mind mechanic, and you often talk about perception over pitch. What does that really mean, and how did that idea take shape in your work?
Well, Jim, the fact of the matter is we assess people very quickly when we meet them. Some people say 5 to 7 seconds. There's some people that say milliseconds that we do the assessment. So many times we think the first time we make an impression is when we talk to them for the first time. But the reality is, Jim, you're putting out impressions all over. Your LinkedIn headshot, your social media, all of that is forming an impression. So a lot of sales are won or lost before the first words are even exchanged. So when I work with my clients, whether it's a corporation or a person, we talk about how do you persuade someone? How do you start to persuade them before the conversation takes place? And then once you're in the conversation, how do you own the room?
Fascinating. You said the deal is often decided in the first few moments. What's actually happening in those few moments, and why do so many people lose influence before they even start talking?
Yeah, so Jim, our brains are remarkable machines, and we've been geared through years of evolution to scan for danger. We always want to have safety as our top priority. So we're always looking, and the funny part is we look consciously, but we look even more unconsciously. So our instincts take over, and many times we'll say, I just had a gut bad feeling about that person. That's just all of our senses coming together. So the brain craves safety. So if I don't see them as safe to start, that's going to influence how everything happens after that. And because the brain wants continuity and consistency, once it creates that initial lens, once it looks at you, Jim, and says you're either good or bad, everything you say to me is filtered through that lens from there forward. So when they say you never get a second chance to make a first impression, it's absolutely true, and it's backed up scientifically.
I am so eager to ask you your first impression of myself when I sent you the invitation, because you mentioned my picture on LinkedIn, for example, or anyone for that matter that you might be contacted by. So when you opened up a LinkedIn, perhaps you remember that, or it obviously led to you accepting this invitation to have this conversation. And then, of course, just before we started recording this podcast, you noted the bobbleheads in the background, and we're both devoted hockey fans. I'm Detroit Red Wings. You are as well.
Right.
You have hockey experience, having worked for the Islanders and the Rangers, which is fascinating. And so give me just a quick synopsis of what you thought, your impression of me when you first either looked at LinkedIn and or when we got here on the podcast.
Well, the LinkedIn profile is great. I really liked the LinkedIn profile, liked your picture. So that was very comforting to start. Also, the fact that you work for EOS, and I know quite a few EOS implementers, that created a safety. And then when you come on, the first thing I looked at was not you, but your background. And so when I saw you were a Detroit fan, it all made it feel like we were together. So there was a lot of safety there. And although we don't think about safety as an influencer for us, it really is. People need to buy from people that they feel safe communicating with and that they trust. So everything I do and everything I teach, Jim, has to do with what vibes are you putting off before you even meet for the first time, and how do we control that?
So you train teams to adjust in real time. What are some of those signals or behavioral cues that people often miss? And can you share a story where awareness completely changed an outcome?
Yeah, so the perception is a lot of what we do. So how do we perceive the person that we're talking to? And how are we conditioned to respond? But what we don't acknowledge, Jim, most of the time is that 80% of communication is nonverbal. So when we get into a conversation with somebody on Zoom or live, many times we disregard what's taking place. The person nods, they tap their pen, they sit back in their chair, they tilt their head. All of it means something. But to understand what every little piece of that means is almost impossible. So what I teach, Jim, is acknowledge it. So Jim, I saw you sit back in your chair. It's obviously something hit. What's on your mind? And I'll give you a great story of how this works. I was presenting to a prospect, and it was a man and a woman. And when she came on, she was striking because her glasses matched her earrings. And I'd never seen that before. It's almost like they were made to go together. So I said to her, I said, man, I really like your glasses. Well, immediately her hand went to her wedding ring. And she started twirling it and taking it off and putting it back on. Most people won't see that or acknowledge it. They'll continue to push through and they'll continue to try to make their point. But the fact is, she was telling me I struck something. And maybe she was reminding herself or me that she was married. I don't know what it was. But the important thing was we redirected and reframed because it was just an innocent compliment. So we redirected, we reframed, and we got back on track. But most founders, solopreneurs, sales reps, Jim, ignore the tiny signals that can mean everything.
Take that a step further. In that example you shared, you're having this interaction with another human being. She's fidgeting with a ring and what you shared in the story. But I think you would also articulate that around the room, observing what's around you, the environment that you're in. Maybe it's a loud party in that case you shared, or maybe it's in a loud office environment or something like that, that might also give you some insight on what you should be prepared to react to or to now think through what the next thing you're going to say.
Yeah. No, Jim, you're dead on. And a lot of people don't buy into this, that you should listen with your eyes as much as with your ears. But let me give a real life example for the audience. So let's say that somebody called you today, Jim, and said, Jim, I have a guaranteed way for you to make $1 million. And it's a 10-minute conversation, but 8 minutes of it is garbled. 80% of what they say is missed by you. This is the same thing of when we're dealing with people. If I miss 80% of the conversation non-verbally, am I getting all of the information? And that is one of the things we talk about quite a bit. I actually just wrote a book, Jim. It's coming out at the end of November. It's called Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. And I go into this in real detail. How to pick up the signs and signals, how to readjust in real time.
Repeat that title and the date that's going to be released.
Yeah, so it's going to be Own the Room, How to Communicate to be Seen, Heard, and Respected. And it should be out at the end of November 2025 this year.
So let's shift a little bit here. I want to talk about in EOS, we focus on clarity, accountability, and communication. How can leaders use behavioral awareness to build stronger trust and alignment within their teams?
Yeah, so when you have a team, a lot of it is reading their take versus reading your own. As leaders, we have this tendency to go into a room and say, this is about me, I'm the leader, and then whatever we want to discuss is what's on the table. But I have coached people, Jim, where they have gone in and given a great presentation, but their team is still withdrawn. And it's because their team has completely different expectations. So a big piece of it is, what do you want to get out of this as a team? What do you expect from me as a leader? What's your perception of me as a leader? So a lot of that just needs to be out on the table so that everybody is getting their needs met.
I failed to ask you to just share an overview really quick about Orchestrate AI, your company. Why don't you tell us what you do and how that serves your clients?
Yeah, so I coined a term, Jim, that is neuro-strategy, and I trademarked it. And neuro-strategy is the combination of behavioral psychology, social psychology, and neurolinguistic programming, which Tony Robbins has made really famous. So it's how to use those three things in order to communicate better and have a higher impact with emails, landing pages, your offer, your value prop. So I've been doing this as a coach for years, helping people really create highly persuasive copy. And I thought, hey, maybe we should put that into a SaaS product. So I did, and we called it Orchestrate. We launched it last December and it's been going really well. But the whole premise behind Orchestrate is when people give their offer, their value prop, it's often not memorable. As a matter of fact, frankly, a lot of times it's completely forgettable. Orchestrate helps you make it memorable. It helps make you unforgettable. And it does that through emails, role plays. It's what any business owner or founder would need to get off the ground and have effective communication.
So artificial intelligence is in the name of your company, correct?
It's Orchestrate LLC, but we do work with AI, correct?
And so what you're essentially doing is blending psychology with coaching, am I correct? Excellent.
Yes. Yep.
So from your perspective, can technology really help people read the room better? Or does that risk dulling the intuition that makes connection human?
Oh boy, do I love that question. Thank you for asking. That is fantastic. I believe that our authenticity is dying at a frightening rate. So do I think AI can hone that? Yes, absolutely. Programmed properly, like Orchestrate, the AI can help you write persuasive copy. But the thing I always tell people is you can use Orchestrate, but eventually you have to talk to somebody. So you need to make sure that you're keeping those human skills and that you are able to talk with people. I always used to get on my kids about, God, all you guys do is text and DM. You're not talking to anybody. So I think AI is a great tool to use, but it's no substitute for the human connection. As a matter of fact, what we built into Orchestrate was it will not only give you the copy, but it'll tell you how it came up with that copy so that you can learn on your own, so you can hone your own skills.
Outstanding. So I'll get you out of here on this. If everyone listening could make one small change to show up more powerfully in their next meeting or conversation, what would that be?
I would say actively listen. And I'll give you a quick tip. This is something I've taught my clients for years. It's called the 2-10 rule. The 2-10 rule, Jim, is based on the fact that for every 10 minutes we talk, you generate 2 minutes worth of questions in the other person. So if you present for an hour, you're generating about 12 minutes worth of questions. So what we did was I created a 2-10 rule that reverses that. It says check in every 2 minutes with somebody. So I may say, Jim, EOS sounds amazing. Tell me a little bit more. And then, Jim, how would I implement that in an EOS? So every 2 minutes I would check in. And then at the end of 10 minutes, I would sum everything up and say, Jim, you know what? I've been talking for 10 minutes now. I probably ran over you with a couple of facts. Do you have any questions on what we covered? So if I check in every 2 minutes, then ask for questions every 10, it forces me to listen. It forces me to slow down. It shows the other person I'm listening. It shows them respect, and it generates a true trust.
You're in the moment.
People. So my advice is listen more.
You're in that moment. I should have been listening. You're in that moment. You're checking in at the end of 10 minutes for the questions, but you're getting no response. Your audience is not responding, has no questions. What do you do then?
That's okay. If they don't have any questions, they don't have any questions. The more important piece of this, Jim, is that you're opening the floor for questions. You're giving them that safety. And what you're not doing is saying, let's leave all the questions till the end, where everybody just gets caught up in the fact that, oh my God, now I have to remember. And then at the end, you have no time for questions. So the 2-10 rule allows you to keep a dialogue the entire way through the conversation and keeps things open.
Jake, this is fascinating. You've been fantastic for this conversation. I really enjoyed our time together. You've shown how small shifts in perception can create massive changes in outcomes, not just in sales, but in leadership and life. For listeners who want to learn more, you can find Jake's work at orchestrate.com and subscribe to his weekly newsletter, Fresh from Jake's Mind Lab. Jake, anything you want to share on that newsletter?
Fresh from Jake's Mind Lab is a weekly newsletter that gives you tips and tricks on how to be memorable and different things you can do for your business to improve the uptick of your messaging as well as enhance communication. And if you want to follow me on social media, I go by Jake the Mind Mechanic.
Jake, thank you for joining me today, and thanks to everyone for listening and for being a part of the Growth Ceilings community. Until next time, keep growing, keep leading, and keep breaking through.
You've been watching the Growth Ceilings podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, make sure to like, subscribe, and share it with someone who's ready to grow.